Alright, welcome to week 4, States of Consciousness. We're going to be talking about drugs, sleeping, hypnosis. We're going to be talking about the impact of drugs and how it affects your mental processes. And we're also going to be talking about sleeping and how it's important in REM. So let's get started right away. Okay, so how is the conscious related to other mental processes? We've heard so far through 4 weeks of AP Psych the word conscious being thrown around, and the conscious experience, conscious. Now we're actually going to understand what the conscious is and how it actually relates and how do we use it all the time. Okay, consciousness can take many forms while other mental processes occur simultaneously outside our awareness. Now, we remember from the first week of memory, our consciousness is what we are aware of. Okay, we have a subconscious just below our awareness, and we have an unconscious which we have no control over and no awareness of. Okay, so what consciousness does for us? It restricts our attention. We're only focusing on one thing at a time. It allows us to hone in and really pay attention. It combines sensation with learning and memory. Okay, no longer are we just thinking things, we're also feeling things, and that bond in our brain between knowing that if we put our hand on the stove while it's hot, that burning sensation we have on our fingers is now mentally connected with the idea of your hand touching the burner. Allows us to create a mental model of the world that we can manipulate. Okay, have you ever thought of something before it happened? Like, for instance, coming home late after curfew, in your head you're like, okay, my mom's going to do this, my mom's going to do that, my mom's going to do this, and I'm going to be dead, she's going to kill me. Okay, that's what our consciousness does. It allows us to work through scenarios in our head before they actually occur. Okay, so there's multiple levels of consciousness. We have our consciousness that we're aware of. It's just like an iceberg. The amount that we are actually aware of and are manipulating is very small. Our unconscious is the largest amount of our mental processing. Okay, we have a pre-conscious, which is a majority of our entire consciousness, and the unconscious, which is the lowest and deepest part. Okay, so when we think of the whole structure, our consciousness includes consciousness, pre-consciousness, and unconsciousness. The things we're aware of is very small. The things that are just below our awareness is much greater, and very small amount is our unconsciousness, what we have no idea about. So continuing along with that idea of the iceberg as our consciousness, what is consciousness? Let's define it a little more clearly. It's the brain processes which we are aware of. Thinking, writing things down, listening, being able to carry a conversation and answer questions and ask questions, that's part of your conscious. The non-conscious is the brain process does not involve conscious processing. Like, for instance, none of you are thinking, breath in, breath out, breath in, breath out. Okay, or your heartbeat, or I really hope my stomach's digesting dinner tonight. All those things are all done on the non-conscious. Okay, the pre-conscious is information that is not currently in conscious, but can be brought into consciousness if attention's called to it. So right now, you're not really paying attention to the temperature of your room, but now since I just mentioned the temperature of your room, you're probably thinking, oh, it's a little cold in here, or oh, it's a little stuffy in here. Okay, the unconscious, many levels of processing that occurs without awareness. Okay, that even when people wouldn't mention it for you to address it. Like, for instance, an example would be the smell of your room. Okay, maybe your mom mentions it, but you instinctively don't think of it on your own. So what cycles occur in everyday consciousness? Consciousness changes in cycles that correspond to our biological rhythms and patterns of stimulation in our environment. We become more aware of our surroundings, hypersensitive, when we are put in a situation where you're uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed in situations where you're incredibly terrified of, oh my God, what's going to happen? Not so much in like a horror movie, but like something really scary going on. Like, for instance, if you've ever been in a car accident, all of a sudden you're very much so aware of your heart beating, of how fast your pulse is, of everything around you. You can remember it specifically. Our consciousness corresponds with our biological rhythms. The more we're aware of, the more our body beats. The heart beats faster. Our brain goes a little faster. Okay, so our body and our consciousness are all tied very heavily together. What cycles occur? Daydreaming, okay? I know for a fact high schoolers especially love to daydream. It's a common variation of consciousness in which attention shifts into memories, expectations, desires, or fantasies, or away from the immediate situation, okay? So daydreaming is when you are in Miss Reeves' AP Psych class and you start thinking about football practice, or I need to do this for homework, or man, she's really cute in the front row. All of that falls into the category of daydreaming. So if we have daydreaming, what is dreaming and what is sleep? Because sleep is the next natural progression. Okay, so before we can get into sleep and daydreaming and how those interact, we have to understand what a circadian rhythm is. It's the physiological pattern that repeats approximately every 24 hours. The circadian rhythm is our body's process of going through things. Like, for instance, my circadian rhythm is I sleep till about 5:30 every day. I wake up, brush my teeth, very tired, does not talk, very slow. 6:30, I'm beginning to be able to be more talkative and be able to make words and share my thoughts. And by 9:30 at night, I'm ready for bed. That's my circadian rhythm. It's my psychological pattern. I'm more productive between 6:30 and noon than most people are all day. My psychological pattern, it's different for every single person. Okay, so the sleep cycle involves REM sleep and non-REM, also known as NREM. REM sleep deprivation leads to REM rebound. But what is REM? Is rapid eye movement. It's a stage that when your body is in true it's truly processing. It's in its deepest form of sleep. Okay? For non-psychologists, they call it a deep sleep. Here in psychology, we call it REM sleep. Okay, so what does it look like? So we're wide awake here in hours of sleep. Okay, we decide to go to bed. We hit stage 1. Okay, so we're in that nice little cusp of where you can fall asleep. You're thinking about fall asleep, and you kind of go in and out of consciousness. Stage 2 is a deeper level of sleep where you're not fading in and out. You are asleep, but it's that very light sleep. Stage 3 is when you are your brain starts to really stop slowing down. Stage 4 is when you are fully asleep, but you haven't hit REM. It looks strange, but REM is where you want to be sleeping 98% of your time. You really don't spend that much time there, but REM is where your body really recovers. And if you've had a lot of REM sleep, you feel much more relaxed, a lot more refreshed when you wake up. And as you'll see, in the stages of sleep, it's in between awake and stage 1. Why? Because your body, it doesn't stop moving. It becomes very tense, very rigid, and your whole mind really kind of goes through your day a little bit and kind of unravels a little bit. As you can see, you don't stay in REM for long, and then you fall back into the stages, and then eventually you build back up. Okay, we spend most of our sleeping patterns in between stage 2 and stage 3, but REM is the most ideal. This is when you have had a lot of REM sleep, you feel well rested, and that's the goal every night, correct? Okay, so what is the function of sleep? I know it's one of my favorite things to do, and you guys probably would agree. It's great. It feels good when you wake up, and, it's nice to get to bed early. But what is the point of it? okay, besides being able to stop moving, okay, it's to conserve energy. Your body is doing so much every single day, burning so many calories, doing all this stuff. It's sleep. It allows you to conserve your energy, allow you to restore the body. It gives your neurotransmitters, your neuron sensitivity, a few hours to recharge and make sure they can perform the next day, and build neural nets and flush out useless information from the brain. What happens is when we're sleeping, our brain is still processing. Your body doesn't shut off. It's not like the lights are on, the lights are off. Your body's still functioning, but it's not requiring certain things that we use more of during the day. Okay, so the neural nets is going through your brain and processing information and eliminating information you no longer need. Okay, so why do we need sleep? Okay, the waking hours is that light blue color, REM is that yellow color, and non-REM sleep is that darker blue color. As you get older, okay, obviously we start seeing the REM sleep is very common between the younger kids are reaching that REM sleep. As you get older, you have less and less REM sleep. I can tell you that the older you get, the more you need it, but it's actually not happening. Look at the percentage of how much waking hours compared to sleeping hours as you go. Okay, so over the years, the need for REM sleep decreases considerably, while the need for non-REM sleep diminishes less sharply. Okay. So REM sleep, have you ever had growing pains, is what my mom used to call it, when like right around at nighttime your legs hurt, you feel like your bones are growing and all that stuff? Sleep is when your body recovers and your body is growing. Especially for young adults and adolescents, sleep is incredibly important because it allows your body to catch up with how fast you're growing. So sleep deprivation is something you all have experienced at some point or another. Now, people respond very differently to sleep deprivation. Some individuals need more sleep and some need less sleep. For instance, I need to have 8+ hours a night. I have to have it. I cannot function without it. My best friend, she only needs about 4 or 5 hours a night. That's it. And she can be fully functioning the next day. Okay? I cannot function with 5 hours or less sleep. Insomniacs, we've all heard, have a normal desire for sleep but unable and feels tired during the day. These are the people who just can't turn off their brain, cannot sleep. Okay, non-insomniacs sleep far less than most. Most of them sleep about 3 to 4 hours a night, but don't feel tired during the day. So my friend Jen would typically fall in the non-insomniacs, for she sleeps only about 4 or 5 hours a night. But if I have less than 4 or 5 hours a night, I become an insomniac and very, very cranky. Okay, so sleep disorders, we're going to kind of go through them very quickly here. I have a little bit more depth for you. Insomnia is the inability to fall asleep or stay asleep. Okay, you fall asleep for half an hour, 40 minutes, you wake up every hour. Okay, REM sleep disorder, sleeper acts out his or her dreams. These are the people who, if they're fighting a dragon with a sword, then they're fighting with a sword. Night terrors, sudden arousal from sleep, and intense fear accompanied with physiological reactions, heart rate, perspiration, and all that incurred during a slow wave sleep. We'll talk about that more. Night terrors are very, very common in children and then become less common the rest of your life. Night terrors would technically be, the feel of falling from, that feeling of falling when you wake up in your bed. Narcolepsy, overpowering urge to fall asleep that may occur while talking or standing up. There's a couple famous movies that mock this. These people fall asleep anytime, any place, and have very little control. Sleep apnea, failure to breathe when asleep. This is becoming more and more common here in the United States. It's a huge problem and very, very dangerous. Insomnia is the first major one, reoccurring falling asleep or staying asleep. We typically prescribe sleeping pills in order to inhibit or suppress REM sleep. It usually worsens the problem, but we try to get them asleep into non-REM sleep. It does not allow them to access REM sleep. Taking pills, like sleeping pills, in order to help you sleep will not allow you to enter REM. You have to do that naturally. Michael Jackson is actually a very famous case for non-REM and REM sleep. Michael Jackson was on sleeping pills for, I think, 20 or 30 years. And he did not reach REM sleep because of the pills. And it was one of the things that drove him to lose his mind, because his body fully can't recover the daily stuff if he doesn't reach REM. We're going to talk about that a little more deeply in class. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep. Okay, so if you're, of course, not you guys, but if you are old enough to have a drink, it does not allow you to reach REM, which makes you feel restless and uncomfortable the next day. Most people overestimate how long it takes them to get to sleep. If I ask you, how long did it take you to get to sleep? You're going to tell me, Miss Reeves, it took me 4 hours, and I only got 2 hours sleep. We actually start losing our time management and our ability to decide how long we have been sleeping and what time is it and how long it took us to sleep every time we access or start thinking about it. It's one of our body's way of tricking us into sleeping more, actually. Sleep apnea, it's a sleep disorder caused by temporary stopping of breathing during sleep. All right. What happens is that your esophagus eventually closes because you're breathing, lack of breathing, and your heart kind of stops, and you literally startle yourself awake by not being able to breathe. It's usually started by loud snorers, actually, and continuous positive airway pressure machine is one of the things we actually use to help that. People who have very bad sleep apnea actually sleep with an oxygen mask in order to force air to continually going. It can be very dangerous, and people can die if it's not treated, so it's pretty serious. Narcolepsy is characterized by uncontrollable sleep. A person goes directly into REM sleep. They don't go to stage 1, 2, 3, 4. They are conscious. They are in REM. Nervous system getting aroused tends to trigger a sleep attack. The more emotion they have, whether positive, sad, negative, whatever, typically triggers it. There's a genetic link, and it runs in some breeds of dogs. We've all seen the dog on YouTube, the narcoleptic dog on YouTube. If you haven't, check it out. It's pretty funny. It shows you that sleep attack can really come out of nowhere. Somnambulism, okay, it's a formal name for sleepwalking. Typically, most kids go in and out of this, actually. It can be a very severe sleeping disorder if it's not treated, if it's not the proper precautions aren't taken. It starts in the deep ranges of non-REM, so typically around stage 4. A person can walk or talk but remembers nothing of the experience. My brother actually used to do this when he was younger, and he used to go upstairs and make himself breakfast at 2 o'clock in the morning and make himself breakfast, and he would talk to my mom, who would wake up and hear him, and my mom would tell him to go to bed, and he would have no idea what was going on the next day. So interesting. Seems like it can be funny, but it can also be very dangerous. Night terrors, okay, it's a sleep disorder characterized by high arousal and appearance of being terrified, okay. People who experience night terrors are not just thinking they're going through something. They're having the physical feeling of being there, like blood pressure, sweat, tears, if that's what it's needed, okay. They have the entire experience. It typically happens during stage 4, and it's mostly with children. The good thing is that we do eventually grow out of this. The children seldom remember the event, but they remember the feelings, okay? So it typically happens in stage 4. Other sleep disorders, just so you're aware, is bruxism, is the teeth grinding. It's very destructive on your teeth. Neurosis is bedwetting. A lot of kids do this and have a big problem with this when they're younger. Myoclonitis is the sudden jerk of a body, particularly occurring during stage 1 sleep. If you've ever slept with your brother, sister or whatever, and they've all of a sudden just jerked out of nowhere, it can scare you, but it's just it's part of the stage 1 process of getting to sleep. Everyone has the occasional episodes of monoclosis. Everybody does, okay? And sometimes it can be so bad you even wake yourself up. So all of these, you typically experience all of these at a certain part of your life. If you do it once, does it mean you have a sleep disorder? No, but if it's a continual habit, then in fact it does become a disorder. If it happens every day or 3 to 4 times a week, that's a problem. Once or twice or even, a couple times a week, and then it stops and you don't have it for months on months, that's not a problem. But just keep in check on it. So dream theories, okay? We're talking about sleeping this week. Dream theories are a huge part of what you need to know. All right, the psychoanalytic interpretation. This is where Freud's bread and butter really started going. Now, you can remember back for 2 weeks ago when we talked about the psychoanalytic theory, okay? It's Sigmund Freud. He believed that dreams are the fulfillment of wishes, okay? Every dream you've ever had, whether you've remembered it or not, is about fulfillment of a wish. Okay? Unacceptable thoughts of sex, aggression are repressed when you are conscious but come forth when you are asleep in a form of dreams. So, if you've ever dreamed of, winning $1 million and buying a house, all of that is wish fulfillment. That you, in your unconscious, believe that you really, really, really want to win $1 million. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. This is what Freud thought was the most important thing, and able to start interpreting our inner thoughts. So this is where he actually really started spending a lot of his time, is analyzing people's dreams. His clients would come in and they would have written down as much of their dreams as possible, and Freud would start analyzing them and giving them an insight into the release of the unconscious and the unacceptable urges that are fighting for their attention. Now there's two components of dreams that Freud was focusing on: manifest content, actual dream images themselves. So say, for instance, you're winning $1 million. You standing in front of your house holding the ticket, okay, and screaming at the top of your lungs is the actual dream images themselves. Manifest content. The latent content is the disguised psychological meaning of that dream. So me standing in front of my house screaming that I won the lottery, the latent content could be that I don't feel worthy because I don't make enough money, okay? Manifest content, me standing in front, the picture of me standing in front holding the ticket. Latent content is the belief that I don't feel like I am worth of anything because I don't have enough money, okay? As far as we've gone through Freud's theories, the research does not support his theories, but there is some insight to be found through psychoanalytic interpretation. It's still around today. It's obviously not as heavily used as when Freud started it back in the early 1900s. The physiological function theory, okay, this believes that our dreams are neural activity during REM sleep, which provides periodic stimulation of the brain. Essentially, what it means is our brain just fires randomly in the night when we hit REM, and that's whatever's coming across. So if a neuron fires by your memories of your 5th birthday, then you're going to see in your dreams in a flashback or neural activity by your 5th birthday. Okay? Activation synthesis model. What this theory believes that brain activity during sleep produces dream images, activation, which are combined by the brain into a dream story. So your brain is just constantly firing all of these images, and it's your brain is trying to process all of these images into a story. Remember, your brain likes a beginning, a middle, and end order to the chaos. So activation synthesis means is that your brain's just firing all these images and your brain's trying to put them in a story. Have you ever woken up from a dream and was like, what the heck was that? It was so many things, so many totally different things all at once. It didn't make sense. Okay? Meaning is to be found by analyzing the way a dreamer makes sense of the progression. Okay? So after you wake up and you look back and you're like, oh, well, this must have happened because of this happened and this happened, gives you more insight into those dreams. Okay? All right, so what, kind of simplify it, activation of the brainstem area, the pons, arouse other brain areas, including the visual and auditory and the limbic systems, which fire off other images. The brain responds to these internally created signals and assigns them a meaning using memories. Okay, so your brain firing off randomly. Images get sent to your visual and auditory cortex, okay? Then your brain starts trying to make a story, gets some meaning from it, okay? So what happens is dreams are a mind's attempt to make sense of neural firings in the brain as one step, okay? So the memory, you can see in my little diagram here, we have the auditory areas activated, the memory and the emotion areas are activated, body movements completely suppressed, stimulation from the external environment's not there. So essentially, the dream is a story created from the brain's own internally generated signals, okay? So your brain's trying to come up with a story. All right, and finally, the information processing theory. Dreams serve as an important memory-related function by sorting and sifting through the day's experiences. Your brain, essentially what this theory is trying to say is that your brain takes in so much information every day that it uses dreams to process through it, just to understand and sift through everything you went through, okay? Research suggests that REM helps memory storage, help putting things in the correct category and making sure things are stored correctly, so it's actually there. So information processing system is about sorting and sifting and making sure our daily activities are recorded in the perfected place. Okay, and finally, the cognitive development theory. Dreams are a reflection of a person's knowledge and understanding of their experiences and are useful for cognitive development. Okay? We have proof that at different ages we dream of different things. Like little kids, when they're like 4 or 5 years old, they're dreaming of literally cookies, cakes, and pies, the world like Willy Wonka had, where the world's made of candy. Okay? And they're also dreaming of their parents being proud of them. Okay? As we get older, our dreams start shifting into looking for personal relationships. They start shifting into purposes of our own desires, our own wants for ourselves. So dreams are a reflection of a person's knowledge and understanding of their experiences. Okay? So here's kind of a nice little breakdown of all of the dream theories. Freud, information processing, physiological activation, and cognitive theory. It provides a nice little explanation and some critical considerations. Now what these are is that it kind of simplifies it a little bit and makes it a little easier to look at. So I'm going to let you process this and then we'll continue. All right, let's move on. All right, so REM and memory consolidation. Memory consolidation is the converting of new memories into long-term, relatively permanent form. REM seems to be helpful with procedural memories like riding a bike. Getting into REM sleep every single night allows you to function better in your life. Improves performance on learned tasks. Brain areas activated during training on tasks are actually reactivated during REM sleep. So say, for instance, you're trying to learn a new basketball skill, okay, or a football drill, or whatever, something physical. If you allow yourself to reach REM sleep, your brain is really focusing on how to achieve that task. So the more sleep you get when you're trying to learn, especially physical things, the better you're going to perform the next day, okay? So what other forms can consciousness take? We just talked about sleep and how important it is in REM sleep and the importance it has on allowing us to process through information and get there. But what other forms does consciousness take? All right, and another major concept that we'll be studying this week is altering our state of consciousness, when some aspect of normal consciousness is modified by mental, behavioral, or chemical means. Now what this means is we're starting drugs, okay? So what other forms can consciousness take? psychoactive drug states, okay? Psychoactive drugs, we can use hypnosis, which maybe wasn't what you were thinking of. Hypnosis used to be a very powerful tool when it first really discovered and really used scientifically. It's kind of now more of a side kind of thing. It's not really seen as a science anymore. We're going to talk about how important it has been and continues to be. Hypnosis, an induced state of altered awareness characterized by heightened suggestibility and deep relaxation. Okay? Hypnotizability, degree to which an individual is responsive to hypnotic suggestions. Now, not everyone can be hypnotized, and not everyone responds well to being hypnotized. Okay? So it's very different. Some people are good and can be hypnotized. Some people can. I've never tried it, but I don't think I could. Hypnosis as an altered state is very interesting. Experts disagree about whether hypnosis involves a distinct state of consciousness. Does this let us tap into a fourth level of consciousness? Or is it just heightened motivation? We hear something, we're focusing only on one thing. Like, for instance, there's a big trend now to use hypnosis to stop smoking. Okay? Are we literally tapping into that consciousness where you want to smoke, and we tell the hypnosis tells you not to do it? Or are you just more highly motivated because you're paying all this money to see a hypnotist, and he's doing it or she's doing it, and you're going through, and well, I guess I should be a little more motivated. Okay, so we don't know how much it actually is involved. There's also a social process such as role playing, that when you get pulled under hypnosis, that you do as you're told and you fulfill that role. There's a dissociative state, okay, is the hidden observer view. That in hypnosis, it's like you're separated from yourself and you're watching yourself behave and act, and you want to change that. Okay? So practical uses for hypnosis, like I said, it's not very prevalent these days. It can have practical uses for researchers, psychological treatment, medical and dental treatment. It's actually becoming very popular in the dentistry. Hypnotic analgesia is a diminished sensitivity to pain while under hypnosis. Okay, so instead of paying for, laughing gas or whatever they call it, people are now just being hypnotized. All right, another form of altered consciousness is meditation. It's a form of consciousness change induced by focusing on repetitive behavior, assuming a certain body position, and minimizing external stimulation. It's all about clearing your mind and allowing your body to express itself. Okay? So those are some ways you can physically change your behavior on your own. Let's talk about psychoactivity and dependence. Okay, psychoactive drugs, we've all heard of them, we're very familiar with them. Okay, it's a chemical substance that alters perceptions, moods, or behavior. There are 3 common psychoactive drugs: caffeine, alcohol, and nicotine. All of you should have heard that, or been or seen them. They're all, of course, legal here in the United States for 18 and up for some, 21 and over for all, and caffeine is out there for anyone. Induced by an altered state of consciousness. Once you're using these 3 things, your consciousness changes. And that's where we're going to get a little more in depth of what that actually means. Common properties of addiction is physical dependence. Like, for instance, my fiance is addicted to caffeine. He literally gets a terrible headache before 11 a.m. if he doesn't have coffee. A terrible headache, and he's the grouchiest man alive. There's a tolerance. He can drink more coffee than anybody else and not feel jittery. He drinks huge cups of coffee because his body needs it. Every time he drinks more caffeine, his body becomes used to that amount. So then he has to bump it up to really feel the caffeine. And that whole progression continues to build a tolerance. Withdrawal symptoms. If he goes 3 or 4 days without having coffee, beyond the headache, he starts getting really shaky without his caffeine. Okay, so when we go away on vacation to a place that doesn't have Dunkin' Donuts, we're in big trouble. There's a drug rebound effect. Once he's back on caffeine or on his Dunkin' Donuts, okay, he is drinking it 2, 3, 4 times a day, just trying to get that fix back in. Okay, caffeine, man. Dunkin' Donuts loves him. Okay, drug abuse is the reoccurrent use that the result of a disruption of academic, social, or occupational function, or in legal or psychological problems. Okay, my fiance does not have a drug abuse problems. He goes to school. It does not disrupt his academics or social or occupational functioning. Now, say if he got into something a little bit harder than Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee, okay, and they started affecting their academics, their social, or their job success, then that would be drug abuse. Dependence is the state of psychological or more physiological need to take more of a substance after continued use. Okay? You could argue that my fiance has some dependent use of coffee. Okay? He needs it. His body shakes without it. That's a dependence. Okay? For alcoholics, they really, really shake. Meth, people who use meth, they typically have terrible shakes, uncontrolled bowel movements, all of the terrible, nasty things you can imagine. Withdrawal follows if the drug is discontinued. Tolerance, reduced responsiveness to a drug, prompting the user to increase the dosage to achieve effects previously obtained by a lower dose. Okay? So imagine you are... we see this a lot with college kids when they first get to college. 1 or 2 beers are typically enough to get someone drunk. Then as they continue after months drinking, then it takes 4 or 5, then 6 or 7, then 8 or 9. That's a tolerance to alcohol. It takes longer to get to the end result of getting drunk. Okay. So tolerance. Okay, just a little bit more clear. Little effect and small drug dose seem to be effective. A large drug dose has a bigger effect. Okay, the response to first exposure is small, not so big. It takes a lot more to produce the same effect. Okay, people who use meth or heroin or cocaine, the first time they take it, they have these euphoric feelings that the rest of the time they're trying to achieve, which doesn't actually occur. You can't achieve that first high, which they spend the rest of their life trying to find that first high. Withdrawal, after you stop taking medication or stop taking the drugs or stop drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee, it's the discomfort and the stress that follow when a person who is dependent on a drug discontinues the drug. Okay? Now, I'm not making light of any of these dependencies, this drug abuse or anything like that by referring to my fiance, but I'm just trying to give you an example of, the impact of caffeine, because caffeine is something that we do deal with and struggle with here in the United States, and, everyone can kind of relate to it. Withdrawal, if we use a more severe example, it's when, a person who's been doing heroin stops doing it and they literally are shaking so convulsively. They're in literally so much pain they have to be sedated because their body's shutting down because they're in so much pain. The symptoms usually are the opposite of the drug effects. So if the drug gives you a euphoric feeling, once you withdraw from it, you're going to feel the worst you've ever felt. Don't take drugs. So why do people abuse drugs? So all of these things sound pretty terrible. Drug dependence, tolerance, you'll never get the same high you do. So why do people do it? There's biological influences. People have genetic tendencies. If your parents were addicted to, say, alcohol, you are more likely to be addicted to alcohol as well. The reason why is because the dopamine reward circuit is passed down genetically, and we're going to talk about what that means. The psychological influences, okay, people who don't feel like they have a purpose, people who don't have fulfilling jobs, people who aren't happy with their lives, tend to use drugs more. Significant stress. The more stressed you are, the more likely you're going to use drugs. Psychological disorders like depression, more likely to use drugs. Okay? The socio-cultural influences, you're more likely to use drugs in an urban environment than you are out in the country. Belonging to a group of friends that use drugs, you're more likely to use drugs. And your peer influence. Okay? All of these drugs and stuff you should have probably heard by now, being adults in the American society, just by hearing hopefully not your peers, but people talking about it around you, and maybe you've experienced some of the hardships of people who've experienced true drug dependence. Okay, so why do people do it? Is multiple reasons. Drugs and neurotransmission. Now, next week we're really going to focus in on neurotransmission, but I think it'll help you understand how it all kind of works together. So we're going to go through it kind of fast. Okay, neurotransmission is the process whereby neurons communicate to each other. Our brain is made up of neurotransmitters. They're literally firing one message from a neuron to another neuron, firing messages going back and forth. Okay? It helps explain the neurotransmission, the connection between one neuron to the next, especially in the brain spinal cord, allow and help explain the effects of psychoactive drugs. Focusing on some neurotransmitters and not others allows for different side effects or different outcomes. Psychoactive drugs interfere with normal neurotransmission. If you are on drugs, you cannot function normally. It doesn't matter what drug you're on, whether it's caffeine, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, whatever, psychoactive drugs interfere with normal neurotransmission. You hear them say, oh, well, it doesn't affect me, it doesn't bother me, it doesn't change anything. Well, they're lying, because it all does. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that cross synaptic gaps. I'll show you a picture and help you understand. When released by sending the neuron, neurotransmitters carry across the synapse and bind to the receptor site, receiving the neuron, setting up the link of chain of communication. Let me show you a visual to help. Okay? I'll get there. The junction between the tip of the sending neuron and the receptor sites on the receiving neuron is called the synaptic gap. Okay? So, here is a neuron. Okay? In the center, we have an electrical impulse that goes through those beaded sections and goes into the receiving neuron. The gap between the neuron and the other end of the other neuron is called the synaptic gap. Okay? Right there, we have the synaptic cleft, which is actually sending out all the signals. Okay? So, here we are at the synaptic gap, which is one neuron here sending the information and one's receiving it. Okay, so we send the neuron, the electrical impulse. The vessels containing the neurotransmitter or the impulse is sent through the synaptic gap. These neurotransmitters are then released into the synapse, where then it goes and finds a receptor site to receive the neuron. At this receptor site, the information, the electrical charge, is then given to the next neuron. Okay? So, the neuron sends the message through the neuron into the synapse, into the receptor sites, and gives the message. At the neuron receiving site, you can see that they pair up, they send the information, it continues on. The root uptake is a process where unused neurotransmitter chemicals are reabsorbed into the sending neuron. So we're sending information, and some of it gets picked up by the neurotransmitters, ones that doesn't get retaken in the reuptake. Okay? So messages that weren't received are now heading back into the neuron. Okay? This is all very important as we get through the drugs. Okay? So psychoactive drugs and the synapse. Psychoactive drugs affect synapses and neurotransmission in 3 ways. They either bind with the receptor sites, they copy the neurotransmitters, they block the receptor site, they don't let messages get through, or by blocking the neurotransmitters root uptake. Okay? Which means they're going to be receiving a lot more neurons firing than stopping it. Okay, so they can mimic a receptor site and make sure that new messages are being sent, blocking the receptor sites so no information is getting through, or they're going to overwhelm the neurotransmitters. Okay? So, 3 ways drugs affect neurotransmission. The drug molecule is mimicking neurotransmitter. Okay? The drug molecule is blocking a neurotransmitter, or the drug molecule is blocking the reuptake of a neurotransmitter, which means it continues to just send and send and send information. So there's 4 different categories, and all these 4 different categories have 4 different ways of sending or affecting your neurotransmission. 4 major categories are depressants, opiates, stimulants, psychedelic, hallucinogens, or marijuana, and designer club drugs is the 5th category. This is for all the newer ones. Depressants depress and inhibit brain activity. They're the ones who block off all the receptors. Opiates are similar to morphine, produce feelings of euphoria and reduce pain. They're mimicking neurotransmitters. Stimulants excite brain activity. They're constantly sending more and more. And psychedelic hallucinogens are distorting sensory perceptions. In designer, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So let's talk about depressants. Okay, depressants are drugs that reduce neural activity and slow body functioning. This includes alcohol and sedatives. Alcohol is the most common of the depressants. Okay, alcohol is a CNS depressant. Barbiturates induce sleep. Tranquilizers relieve anxiety. These are the big 3 for depressants. Okay. Alcohol is found in beer, wine, and liquor. The second most used psychoactive drug. Caffeine is the most popular. Slows thinking and impairs physical activity. So the more you drink, the more you slow down. Okay? It's about making you depressants slow down your heartbeat, slow down your respiration, and slow how fast you go. Okay? So how does alcohol affect your brain? Okay, so if you look on the one on the left, you see a very morphed brain. It looks much smaller compared to the brain on the right. Alcoholism shrinks your brain after many years of using it. Okay, so alcohol, even if you're not the one drinking it, fetal alcohol syndrome has had major effects on babies. This is what a 6-year-old baby looks like with a normal brain and with fetal alcohol syndrome. Okay, so when people say, be careful, drug alcohol is so common, it can affect if you use and abuse it. Sedatives are drugs that reduce anxiety or induce sleep, also known as tranquilizers, includes barbiturates and benzodiazepines. Okay, barbiturates are drugs that depress the activity of the central nervous system and thereby reduce anxiety. Okay, it can be lethal to overdose and interact with other drugs, especially alcohol. Lots of famous rock stars have died because of this. It impairs both memory and judgment, can create tolerance and physical and mental dependence, as well as withdrawal can cause REM, rebound nightmares, hallucinogens, disorientation, and even life-threatening convulsions. Okay, so the abuse of barbiturates can result in terrible hallucinogens and not understanding what's real and what's not. Benzodiazepines or tranquilizers are drugs that depress the activity of the central nervous system without most of the side effects associated with barbiturates. Okay, so these you aren't going to have such a negative reaction to, like Valium and Xanax. They can create a very, very harsh dependency, but they do reduce anxiety. Inhalants are chemicals that are inhaled to alter consciousness. Paint glue, gasoline, nitrous oxide, and all aerosol sprays. A low dose may result in reduced inhibition. High doses can cause hallucinogens and loss of consciousness. Okay, they're very dangerous. They can prove to be very harsh. This is more of a modern inhalants have become more and more popular as the more paint, glue, gasoline, and aerosol sprays become more prevalent. So let's talk about opiates. So we just talked about depressants. All of those slow your body down. Opiates have a different effect on your body. These are the drugs that depress neural activity, temporarily lessening pain and anxiety, and produce feelings of euphoria. Okay, these include opium, morphine, and heroin. So you're not going to have so much stuff going through your brain. You're not going to be processing that much, but you're going to have these feelings of enlightenment and feelings of happiness, of just true happiness. Okay, a major part is endorphins. They're natural opiate-like neurotransmitters linked to pain, control, and pleasure. It's our body's own natural painkiller. So endorphins is what we already have inside of us. And when we stub our toe and we have that huge wave of pain, and eventually it starts going down, that would be endorphins. Morphine, okay, is used to mimic endorphins that our body naturally produces. It's a strong sedative and pain-relieving drug derived from opium, which is a plant that grows in China. Very, very, very popular in the late 1700s, 1800s as well. Works by preventing pain neurons from firing or releasing pain signaling neurotransmitters into the synapse. What happens is you pretty much just become numb to the world. We use morphine still to this day, even though it does have can create a very, very strong dependence. All right, but it allows you not to feel pain. Other opiates that are very popular are chemically similar to morphine and have strong pain-relieving properties. Okay, mimics the brain's endorphins. People just feel good, they don't feel pain. Heroin, methadone is all opiate-based. Paracotin, Demerol, all of those are opiates that have a huge effect on feeling no pain, but feeling happy. All right, so the next one is stimulants. These are not like depressants. They are the direct opposite of depressants. Depressants slow your body down. Stimulants get you going. Opiates don't allow you slow down your thinking process, but giving you the feeling of happiness and joy. Stimulants are a little bit different. These are drugs that excite neural activity and speed up body functions, including caffeine, nicotine, amphetamines, and cocaine. All are at least mildly addictive, okay? This makes your whole body move faster, your brain, the firing of your neurotransmitter, everything is going at a much faster rate. Caffeine, I think everyone can relate to the fact that they've eaten or drank too much coffee or too much caffeine, and the fact that you feel super shaky and you feel like you're wide awake and you have so much going on and you can see and you can do everything. Okay, it provides users with a sense of increased energy, mental alertness, and forced wakefulness. Okay, it's found in coffee, chocolate, tea, and in some soft drinks. Blocks neurological receptor sites that, if activated, sedate the central nervous system. Okay, withdrawal symptoms are sleepiness, fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, and increased heart rate. Nicotine is a stimulant found in tobacco. Effects similar to those of caffeine, reduces fatigue, drowsiness, and increases mental alertness. Okay. Affects various areas in the brain, affecting mood, attention, and arousal. It can be very addictive and does not stay in the body very long. Since it doesn't stay in the body that long, you have to use it again very quickly. Okay, we're going to be showing a video clip about nicotine and just in class this week. Cocaine is stimulant derived from the leaves of a coca plant. Crack is cocaine crystals after they break it down. It blocks the reuptake of certain neurotransmitters. Dependency is quick and severe. Places extreme strain on cardiovascular system. It causes cocaine psychosis, a schizophrenia-like symptom, including auditory hallucinations, paranoia, cocaine bugs, or tactile hallucinogens. The reason why cocaine creates all of these very severe cocaine psychosis is because it gets your brain going so fast in your body's neural connections going so fast, your body doesn't know what to do when it doesn't have it in it. It becomes so overwhelmed and so overtired it can't compensate. And we're going to talk about how it really works a little bit more in class. So hallucinogens, we're going to talk about that a little bit. It's drugs that distort perceptions and evoke sensory images in the absence of sensory input. This includes LSD, mescaline, and marijuana. So when using those drugs, you feel like you see things and hear things and have sensory images, but they actually never occurred. It's your brain's own creations. LSD has powerful hallucinogenic drug, also known as acid. It effects vary from person to person. Users can be dangerous to themselves and others, similar to neurotransmitters. Okay, it tries to emulate serotonin. Okay, we're going to talk about the impact of serotonin, and flashbacks, chaotic reactions can occur. So being on LSD means your mind is creating different scenarios, whether you've been or not. Now, marijuana, leaf stems, resin, and flowers form the hemp plant. Okay? When smoked, it lowers inhibitions and produces feelings of relaxation and mild euphoria. THC is the active ingredient in marijuana. Its receptors in the brain for anandamide also accept THC. So what it does, it disrupts memory and allows you to feel like you have more serotonin than you're supposed to create a mild feeling of relaxation. Withdrawal can cause insomnia, tremors, and decreased appetite. It is helpful in decreasing nausea and reducing effects of glaucoma. There you go. Club drugs are ecstasy, feelings of euphoria, increased well-being, the fact that you can fly even though humans can't. Side effects are dehydration, hypothermia, rapid tremors, rapid heartbeat. Okay, you can literally kill your heart by using ecstasy once. Your heartbeat goes so fast that it can literally wear out. Ecstasy is a hallucinogenic drug that provides lower inhibition, pleasant feelings, and greater acceptance of others. If you come into contact with a person on ecstasy, they love everybody and think everybody's awesome. It's also called MDMA. It blocks serotonin reuptake, prolonging its good feeling, so it lasts for a very long time. Even moderate users of ecstasy who use it just once can experience permanent brain damage to serotonin nerve endings and even memory, which can last years later and makes you unable to speak like you used to speak, makes you unable to feel as happy doing other things that used to make you happy. Dehydration and rapid heartbeat, tremors, muscle tension, teeth clenching, and high body temperature can result. And all of these things can, in fact, actually kill you. So, other club drugs, dissociative anesthetics, including PCP and ketamine. Deaden pain, produce stupor or coma, may induce hallucinogens, create feelings of dissociation and depersonalization. Okay, it's not really a drug you use out and about with other people. PCP or angel dust, ketamine. Effects of trips differ from person to person. Okay, when using it, we talk about when using it, it can result in hypothermia, which is high blood pressure, convulsions, and death, even just once. Affects the neurotransmitter glutamate, which causes the release of more dopamine into the brain. Dopamine in your brain is what gets you thinking. It's making the most powerful thoughts process, all of that. So having too much of that, your brain is just going a million miles an hour, and it's incredibly highly addictive. Long-term effects can be memory loss and severe depression. Okay, so here is just a nice little list of all the things that all the things about the drugs. Okay, drug names, type, pleasurable effects, adverse effects. Okay, we're going to talk this week. I'm going to show you a little video thing talking about the different types of drugs, why they are used, how they are used, and what is actually going on in your brain going through this week, and you'll really enjoy it. So I'll give you a minute or two to look at this. So I hope you had a great weekend and good luck this week. And that's the end of States of Consciousness. So we talked about all of the brain waves. We talked about the different ways that drugs affect our mental consciousness, hypnosis, all of these fabulous, wonderful things we'll be talking about this week. So good luck. Please bring your questions. I'll be happy to help. And that's all. Have a great week, guys.